during the government shutdown. So he gets out there, and basically the scope of work says to replace some window panes on this mutton type window, where basically it's like 12 panes of glass, and like 3 of them are broken, type of deal, right?
Okay.
So goes out there, he discovers, after he starts tearing, kind of, chipping away the window a little bit and kind of digging in there, he discovers that it's not 12 panes, it's one individual pane with a aesthetic like mutton on it, and all sort of internal framing and things like that. So he talks to the Corps, because the Corps lives there, right? It's in the middle of nowhere on a mountain. And he's basically like, man, there's no way I can replace just these individual panes. This is a whole, like, tear out and redo the whole sash and, whatever. And the Corps basically agreed with him. We did all the other work. He kind of saved that for last because it was the most challenging. He was out there for about 7 to 10 days. And so he claims the Corps says, yeah, man, I agree with it. It's not really possible. It's not really the way the scope of work read. You're pretty much done. So Des demobilizes. 2 days later, the government opens. I build a job. The CEO sends me a letter basically saying, you're not done. We found out some windows weren't replaced or whatever. So I prepare a pretty in-depth letter responding to that, basically. The only problem is I claim differing site conditions because I responded too fast. I should have did a little more research. And basically saying that the scope of work said to replace some panes, but it was so on and so forth. This is what we really found. So she comes back, and what she said in her first email, and she came back in the second. Her response to my kind of long letter, kind of a legal position on it, but she just responded back basically saying you need to come back and perform the work as outlined in the scope. And she kept saying this, attending the site visit. Well, in her first email, she said, well, you should have been at the site visit. You had the chance to ask questions at the site visit. Should have had somebody at the site visit. So my letter addressed that. But then she comes back later with the second email following my letter. She says, attending the site visit. Actually, hang on. Let me back up. Let me tell you what the scope of work says. The scope of work in the contract says to replace 7 broken window panes measuring approximately 10 inches by 10 inches. And what she's referring to is there's 12, it looks like there's 12 panes on this one window, and a total of 7 of the what appear to be small panes are broken. The actual window itself is really a 40 by 30 inch pane of glass that appears to be 12 individual ones, right? So what she's saying now is attending the site visit would have clearly shown via the cracks in the glass that it is one large piece of glass rather than the small pieces with the muntins in it, right?
Is
so
that true?
That we would have seen it?
Yeah.
I mean, I don't know if you chipped away at it and got a flashlight and shined it between the things. That maybe you could have seen that. But here's the problem: even if we were at the site visit and we saw some cracks in the glass, I don't know if we would have. I don't know how smart that technician is at the site visit if we'd have been there. But here's the problem: when referring to this window that she's talking about being one large piece of glass rather than small pieces, the scope of work talking about that window says there's 7 broken window glass panes measuring approximately 10 inches by 10 inches. So they quantified it. And so they quantified that this 40 by 30 inch piece of glass was actually, in the scope of work, 7 10 by 10 inch panes. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So what we really have here is a defective spec, because she's saying if you'd have been at the site visit, you'd have seen that basically the scope of work was wrong. But my stance is it's not the government's responsibility to make the government revise the scope of work based on information that they would have known at the time they put it out to bid, nor am I able to deviate from a scope of work in a contract if there's essentially differing site conditions or a defective scope, or am I?
I'm leaning towards a latent ambiguity.
Well, that's what my first letter to her. I'll send it to you if you feel like reading it. That's my first letter addressed, and that's kind of why I wanted to talk to you before I sent the second letter, because that's my first letter was basically that, like, we've got a latent ambiguity. Let me send this.
Well, yeah, because look, saying that you would have seen this at the site visit, it's different. And anybody else that went to the site visit would have had a duty to inquire about the difference between what they're seeing and what's required by the contract documents. That is a classic definition of a latent ambiguity.
Okay. Yeah, I basically said that, latent. I says I kind of reference this as a latent manufacturing condition, not discoverable by visual inspection. I probably shouldn't have worded it like that, but I basically said this manufacturing characteristic is latent and not reasonably discovered through ordinary observation, including during a pre-bid site visit.
Well, except that I would have, man, I wish you would have called me first before you sent that thing off, because
I'm sorry.
Jesus Christ, dude, I can't stand it when people call me and we're behind the eight ball when we could have.
I'm sorry.
Jesus Christ.
I mean, this isn't a big job or anything like that. I'm really just kind of kicking, just really kind of blowing some.
Well, look, let me just tell you, had you and I had this conversation before you sent anything to the government, I would have said this is a latent ambiguity, and I would have said, then show me where the people that did go to the site visit, where they asked the government, hey, the plans and specs show 10 to 12 panes, or 10 by 12 panes, and we're looking out here in the field and you can clearly see it's one big piece of glass. Show me where somebody brought that up to the federal government and I'll agree with you. Otherwise, this is a latent ambiguity. It's a change to the contract, and a big piece of glass costs a lot more to replace than, 6 or 7 or whatever the number is of little panes. Okay, which everybody, including the government, expected to do. If you think that this contract requires replacing a large pane of glass, show me in the federal government budget where, when the estimators were putting together their bid, that they put in, 42 inch by 42 inch pane of glass, and then please explain to me why they then went into the specifications and wrote 6 or 7 10-inch panes. That's what the letter should have said.
Yeah. Trying to think, do I want to have a phone call with her? Because she sat on that letter for about 2 days before she responded.
Well, then the next thing you can do is, I'm recording this conversation. I'll forward it over to you so you can rewrite this thing, unless you already got it. But
no, I don't think you.
But well, I mean, got it in the sense of you got what we've been talking about. You get the idea. but the thing is you can say in the letter, I consulted an outside resource who suggested that this is what I really meant to say, and we look forward to the government's response.
Okay. Yeah, that's fine. And if we were, I kind of want to. Oh, here's what in addition to your insight, here's the next thing I wanted to kind of ask you. It's only like a $25,000 contract, and it's low cost. I mean, if I had to replace some windows, even though the scope didn't say to do that, but if I had to do that, it'd be a little bit of, it sucks. But
well, yeah, it's not the end of the world. I get that. Yeah.
Right. Yeah, so if this was like a job on the Hoover Dam or something like that, I'd be like, okay, this is a big deal. But
yeah, for the I get that this is an academic discussion. I get it.
There you go. So what I kind of wanted, so the stance that I kind of want to take is, and she showed a picture of another thing that we did that basically just claiming like poor workmanship, and so I'll own that. We'll send somebody out to fix that. But she's trying to lump poor work into this other latent ambiguity issue as basically saying you're not done out here. But what I want to do is I want to get the government, and I was looking for the FAR clauses, but I want to get the government to produce a punch list of all items in every single building and whatever that they're claiming, because they're basically saying you're not done, you need to come back. And, it's 2,000 miles away. You know what I mean? So A, I want them to give me a punch list, and B, I want the government to know that we are not accepting, we are not volunteering that work that's a latent ambiguity, but I need to invoke some sort of action from her, whether it's a cure notice or, something.
Oh, no, she can put that on the punch list, and you can, what's the word I'm looking for? I'll come up with it in a little bit, but the word I'm looking for is basically saying, we recognize that that line item is, we disagree that this is a punch list item. It is a latent ambiguity, and and further discussion is required. But we're essentially setting this aside, and we'll continue and finish all the other punch. But I'll remember the word here in a minute. You just got me on the spot.
Yeah, you just kind of said, we acknowledge this, but we're setting that aside. Yeah. And the reason I say that is I want to, on this one, I'm going to plant my heels, because I do feel like we have a decent argument, and I've never had to file a claim with the government, and this would be a cool one to learn, in my opinion.
Oh, sure.
It's not a big deal.
I got no problem with that. But look, you can say I wouldn't do it in this next letter, but at some point when they say, hey, we're going to take a step or whatever on this thing, then you can say that in order to avoid a show cause letter or a termination for default, Marcus Corporation is proceeding to replace this. We are not volunteering, and we're doing it under protest, and a claim will be filed. A request for equitable adjustment will be filed if the government doesn't amend the contract to modify the contract to pay for it. We'll turn around and we'll file a claim under the Disputes Act of 1978, and if it's further denied, we will appeal it to the Armed Services Board of Contract Appeals.
Okay. I just think it'd be fun to learn to do that because I've never done it before.
Oh yeah, I've done that many times, and I know the language by heart. I use it exclusively with my members, and the reason that because it's easy for me. As an example, when we get off the phone here, I'm going to hit this button. It's going to end the recording, and then I can send the link directly to you on Telegram, like within seconds.
Oh, that's cool.
Yeah, I use it with all my members.
Okay, cool. Shoot it over. Let me use this as an opportunity to.
All right, I have a video on how to set it up. I'll send you the video.
All right, cool, man. Shoot me this call, man. I appreciate it.
Yep, you got it.
Thank you, Sean.
Bye.